Is booing players okay? Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer on this Friday, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode, I'll be talking about, is booing players okay, especially your own players? A reaction to the fan poll that I ran on the Locked On Syracuse Twitter page, which was the best player currently at Syracuse right now, and previewing the Notre Dame game for the men's basketball team tomorrow at noon. We start off with booing players, though. And the whole concept to me is really fascinating. I've been on Twitter a lot over this past week or so, and fans seem to be on opposite sides of the spectrum here on whether booing players, especially their own players, and when I mean own players, I'm talking about Syracuse, and whether that's acceptable or not, and whether that makes you a good fan or a bad fan, the whole 9 yards. I think we can all agree on one thing, that booing in general, especially the other team, booing officials is totally normal. It's totally normal, totally in bounds, and a way of showing frustration. Or it's a way of showing respect when a player is really good and he gets booed a lot, right? I think we can all agree on that. Where a lot of people are disagreeing is booing their own players. And where it all, I believe, stems from is when Justin Taylor was booed during starting lineups for the North Carolina game. That's where it all is stemming from. And Syracuse hasn't had a home game yet since that game. They haven't, right? Syracuse had 2 road games after that, Georgia Tech, NC State. So tomorrow is going to be the first time back in the Dome in about 2 weeks. And Justin Taylor was booed during warmups against North Carolina. Does that make you a bad fan if you boo your own players? To me, it doesn't. I believe that it is, once again, a way of showing frustration and is perfectly in bounds. Whether or not it actually gets a player to play better is irrelevant to me. Sure, it might not necessarily work, but booing is not a bad thing. It is totally acceptable to boo people. Especially, not boo people, boo athletes. It's totally acceptable to do it, especially when you get to the Division I level, Division I men's basketball. Okay? That's a big spotlight right there, especially for Syracuse. It's okay. I don't think that makes you a bad fan. It doesn't. You pay good money to go to the arena, right? You pay good money to go to the Dome. If you want to boo, that is your right. It's totally your right, and I don't believe it makes you a bad fan. I truly don't. Now, there are a couple arguments. The arguments against me are really, it doesn't make players play better anyway, right? It doesn't help the player. Okay, but to me, that's not really relevant to the discussion we're having, whether it's makes you a good fan or a bad fan. Playing better, the whole point of booing is that someone does play better, right? The other argument is, well, they're college kids. And this one really drives me nuts. They're college kids. How can you boo them? First of all, you wouldn't be saying this if it was the other team. And second of all, yes, they're college kids, but this is also Division I basketball. Games are played on national television. Okay? And with NIL, these players are now getting paid. They are starting to become more professional than they are amateur since NIL has been introduced. Period. End of story. So I don't really view these guys as just kids. They're just kids playing a game. That's like that's like saying that that's like a 10-year-old. Yeah, a 10-year-old playing basketball as a kid playing a game, and we shouldn't boo those kids. But these guys are over the age of 18. They are technically adults. They are receiving NIL money. They are on full scholarship. It is okay to boo them. Now, what's not okay is going that extra mile. That's where it's a problem, right? And I don't want to get into whole like what is and what isn't acceptable. I think we all know what actually isn't acceptable as a fan, right? We all know what actually is not okay to do when you're in the arena, like stuff that can genuinely get you kicked out and banned for life. We all know the stuff that I am talking about. Booing is not in that category. And booing your own players, whether it makes them play better or not, to me, doesn't make someone a bad fan. They are allowed to express frustration. That's where I stand on the whole issue. Now, would I boo Justin Taylor? Probably not, especially at warmups. Not warmups, for starting lineups. I wouldn't boo Justin Taylor in starting lineup, but that's my preference. That's my choice. Now, if Justin Taylor airballs a shot tomorrow, am I going to boo him? It's possible. It's possible. Because you shouldn't be airballing in the Division I level, right? And I know it happens and everything like that. But that's where I land on the whole thing. That's where I land on it. I don't think it makes you a bad fan if you decide to boo your own players. I don't. I genuinely don't. And if you disagree with me, feel free to let me know. Feel free to let me know. And if you agree with me, tell me why you agree with me. Leave it in the comments below. That's where I stand on all the booing and everything. Now, a quick side note here before we move on to the next topic. Everyone like the background and the lighting a little bit more? I think it's upgraded. It's still the same flag, but I basically moved my desk and I put a light in front of my face. So now I have the sun right in front of me. It's making me kind of see stars right now for those that are watching. But I hope everyone kind of enjoys it. I was getting comments about that and how I needed to improve it. And so last night I did some shuffling and I did improve it. Now, coming up after this, after that quick little side note here, I'm going to react to the fan poll, the best player at Syracuse right now, and reveal the winner right here on the Locked On podcast. Spring break is around the corner, which means you're going shopping. But don't shop for your big trip and get nothing in return. You're getting cash back every time you shop with Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into the Locked On podcast. Or Locked On Syracuse podcast. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We just discussed, is booing players okay, specifically your own ones? And now to a little bit more of a positive note, the best player currently at Syracuse right now. And it was an overwhelming result. The three contestants that I listed were Dyaisha, Judah Mintz, Oronde Gadsden, or other. And please forgive me, I did forget to mention Joey Spallina. He would technically fall in the other category. I got to be honest with everyone. I sent out the poll on Twitter, and about an hour later, I looked at it, and it was doing great. There were a lot of votes, lots of engagement and everything. I think nearly 10,000 people ended up engaging with the poll. There were maybe 1,000 votes on it. And I realized about an hour in that Joey Spallina was not mentioned. I completely slipped my mind. And that is my mistake. It happens. What can you do? So I apologize to Joey Spallina and to all those who wanted to vote for Joey Spallina. But the winner of the poll was Dyaisha, who won 65% of the votes. Dyaisha, a top 5 scorer in NCAA women's basketball history. She easily won this vote, and for good reason. And I believe it was about a week ago on the Twitter, which, by the way, I'll leave a link below to follow it. I said that Dyaisha was the best athlete on campus right now. And I had someone reply to me saying that, well, best athlete, what are you talking about? What I mean by that is really best at what they do. Best at what they do. And Dyaisha, what she does for women's basketball and how good she is compared to the field is more than the other people that I have, the other athletes that I had mentioned. And some of the polls I'm going to agree with, and some of them I'm going to disagree with. In this case, I 100% agree with what people said. I 100% agree with the audience. I love Judah Mintz, but when comparing Judah and Dyaisha, we're not asking who's going to win a one-on-one basketball contest. We're asking who's better relative to the field. Who's better relative to the competition? And I don't think it's a debate that Dyaisha is better than Judah Mintz. Dyaisha is probably, it might be a first-team All-American in women's basketball. Judah Mintz is not going to sniff that in men's basketball. And Oronde Gadsden, love Oronde Gadsden. I saw someone say on Twitter that he might have the highest ceiling of them all. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that wasn't the question. It's right now. Now, highest ceiling is a different question. I do agree that he might have the highest ceiling of anyone that I had listed and the others. I honestly think that if Oronde Gadsden were to go to the NFL draft, it's possible he can be a day 2 pick if he has a good year. If he has a good year this year, he can easily be a day 2 pick. But that would mean, for those that don't know, that would mean he would go in the NFL draft between the second and the third round. That's what it would mean. It's day 2. Don't think it would be round 1, though. But he's had one really good season, And then last year he had high expectations and got hurt. And it wasn't his fault, obviously. I'm not going to blame a guy for getting hurt. It was an unfortunate injury that happened very early in the year. It happened very early. It's unfortunate. He missed the rest of the season, got hurt in the Western Michigan game very early. But Dyaisha Fair has been healthy this whole time for the last 2 years. And I think she totally deserved it. Totally deserved to win the poll. And I'm glad that people recognized it. I'm glad that people recognized that Dyaisha Fair and what she's doing with the Syracuse women's basketball team. We're going to not talk about last night. We're not going to talk about last night's game against Duke because that wasn't very good for those that watched. That wasn't very good. So we're not going to talk about that one. We're just going to look at the whole season together and what she has done for that team and how I kind of alluded to it yesterday, the story of that program and how a couple years ago they were in the abyss and now look where they are. They were a top 4 projected seed headed into yesterday. They're not anymore after that game to Duke. But Dyaisha Fair deservedly won the poll, and I agree with the audience on that one. I think every single Friday from now, I'm going to do a fan poll reaction. If you guys want that, let me know. I think that's my plan going forward with this. I am still experimenting on the channel here. This is only the 3rd episode that I have done since taking over for Locked On Syracuse. But I think it would be good that every single Friday I react to a poll that I put on Twitter. And once again, I will leave the link to the Twitter in the description below so that you guys can follow it. All right, so that's that for the best player at Syracuse right now, which is Dyaisha Fair. Coming up, previewing Notre Dame tomorrow at noon. Syracuse returns to the Dome. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And hey, if you believe in what Coach Fran Brown is doing with Syracuse football, you can go on FanDuel and bet on its over-under win total for the season right now, which is currently sitting at 6.5 wins. I personally have them at 7. 7 wins is over 6.5. So if you want to heed my advice, go ahead and take that bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back here to Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, closing out the show with a preview of Syracuse and Notre Dame tomorrow in the Dome at noon. Let's just cut right to the chase. I can't really speak right now. Apologies for that. Let's just cut to the chase right now. Syracuse and Notre Dame. This is not a must-win game for Syracuse. This is falling in the other category of can't lose. Syracuse cannot lose this game. They can't. It's on Jim Boeheim Day. They're going to celebrate Jim Boeheim's legacy. I don't know exactly what they're going to do in that regard, but you can't lose. It's Jim Boeheim Day. It's a Notre Dame team that's among the worst in the ACC. This team can't score. Can't score. Can't do it. Can't do it. I have it written down. Worst offense in the ACC. They have one player in Marcus Burton who averages over 10 points a game. One guy. One. That's it. Come on. Come on. We all know this. We all know that Syracuse just cannot lose this game. And when I mean cannot lose, right? What are the stakes at place? That's what's important with all this. Well, if you still believe that Syracuse has a shot at making the NCAA tournament with an at-large bid, not just winning the conference, well, if they lose to Notre Dame tomorrow, you can squash that goodbye. Notre Dame is outside the top 140 in the net rankings. That's how bad this team is. Outside the top 140. Think about all the criticism that Syracuse has gotten over this season. And they're still in the top 90 in the net. Notre Dame is outside 140. 140. They cannot lose this game. They can't. They can't lose this game. How many times am I going to have to say it? Now, I also am missing something. And I know I'm missing something, and you might be thinking it, and I think we might be thinking the same thing here. J.J. Starling's revenge game. J.J. Starling's revenge game. He grew up in Baldwinsville. He committed to Notre Dame as a 5-star prospect. Played there last season, all ACC freshman. Decides to enter the transfer portal. Now we all know he's playing for Syracuse. And if you don't, well, now at least you know, right? It's his revenge. There are so many factors here that just make this type of game almost a little bit scary to me because there's no real metric that says they should lose. I know that Notre Dame is a good defensive team. They're pretty good on defense, actually. Actually, very good compared to the conference. But guys, let's not kid ourselves here. Let's not do that. Come on. You got to beat Notre Dame at home. You got to beat the bad teams, especially at home. There's no reason why Syracuse should not win this game by double digits. But to be quite honest with you all, I don't care how they win. I do not care how they win. I don't. But I'm just saying they should win by at least 10 plus. They should do that. Notre Dame is not a great rebounding team either. They only have a couple guys who average at least 5 rebounds a game. Among the worst in the conference, maybe the worst. Let's not kid ourselves. We're having a conversation here. And if you still believe in Syracuse as a tournament team, even if you don't, you know that this is a game that Syracuse simply cannot lose. Can't lose it. This is one of those, if you lose, it's a tournament killer. Maybe even for the NIT. It is a tournament killing loss. And they don't really gain much ground if they win. That's what makes this game a can't lose. See, a must win is one of those where you got two teams fighting in the same category or a team is fighting to get up in a category, right? And it's one of those, you got to win this game. Or it's a single elimination like the ACC tournament, like you got to win. This falls in line of can't lose. Syracuse doesn't gain much ground if they win. They really don't, because I've already outlined it that Notre Dame can't score offensively outside the top 140 in the net. One guy who averages over double figures a game, and he's 5'11", by the way. Marcus Burton is listed at 5'11". This is one of those where I don't know how many times I need to say it to you. There isn't much ground to gain for this one game. There isn't. There are still opportunities left, mainly at Clemson, if Syracuse were to win that one, where they would really climb, I believe, in the net. They could really climb and maybe put themselves back on the bubble. But this is not one of those games. At home against Notre Dame, outside the top 140 in the net rankings, I'm not going to be a very happy camper on Monday if Syracuse were to somehow lose this game. I do not care how the Orange win tomorrow. I do not care how they win. Just win the bleeping game. Win. That's all there is here on Locked On Syracuse on this Friday. Thank you guys all for listening. I'm Jackson Holzer. Coming up on Monday, I'll have a reaction to the Notre Dame game, and we'll monitor the news for the weekend or so and see what else there is to talk about. I think going forward, we're going to go with a poll every single Friday, and I hope you guys, as I alluded to earlier in the show, you guys enjoyed the new setup in the background for those that are watching and the new lighting. Once again, thank you guys for the support over these first few episodes. It really means a ton, and I take feedback very seriously from you guys. I know it's not easy coming back and basically missing most of the football season and most of the basketball season, and I'm kind of jumping in here, and it's a weird time to jump in. So I just appreciate all those that have listened so far and shown the support, who have given feedback. It really means a ton and is making this start a lot easier because of that. So once again, thank you guys all for listening. I'm Jackson Holzer. We'll be back on Monday.